clock is ticking for political parties to form coalitions in hung municipalities, and the hanging metros are the Johannesburg, Ekurhuleni, Nelson Mandela Bay, as well as Tshwane and eThekwini. But for more on this, we're joined by local government expert Paul Berkowitz to just bring us some clarity on what's happening right now. Paul, good to have you and good morning to you. Interestingly, Gareth was speaking to Terry Tsilane, former, head of the IEC, talking about, political parties not having enough time or more time on their hands, because come 23rd November, there should be a decision made on those coalitions. What do you foresee here? Do you think they've wrapped up? Do you think they're close to even making a final decision, or are they far from it from what you see?
Good morning, Tumelo. I think that in a few municipalities, they've made a decision, or they're very close to making a decision. The news keeps updating all the time. We've just seen this morning that it looks like in the city of Johannesburg, a DA Action SA-led coalition is very close to getting a majority. But in one or two other municipalities, ones like Ekurhuleni and eThekwini, it's going to be more difficult, because over there, the numbers are with the ANC and the EFF, and nobody wants to really work with either of the parties, and it looks like they are having a difficulty, the ANC and the EFF, talking to each other.
Yeah. So what then is the backup plan here, and as far as at least the ANC is concerned? Because like you said, rightfully said, there are headlines suggesting that an ANC-EFF coalition may be imminent, but if it doesn't work out, what could be then the backup plan?
Right. Well, an ANC-EFF coalition would be a simple majority already in Ekurhuleni and eThekwini, which would be enough for a coalition government in those two metros. And it would also give the two parties, if they were to form a coalition, a head start in places maybe like Tshwane, where they have a possibility of making a coalition, and in Nelson Mandela Bay. If that doesn't happen, we know last week that the ANC negotiation team said that they're happy for elections to be rerun in those municipalities where a coalition cannot be formed. So that is a remote possibility. That's not an inevitability. It would require intervention of provincial MECs and things like that. But there is a risk that where a coalition can't be formed, that we're going back to rerun some elections.
Right. With that being said then, Paul, I'm just reading an update here in as far as what Judas Malema had to say at the welcoming event of Abatebu King Buelekha Dalinki about his residence in Mthatha, that it seems the EFF is eyeing Tshwane. They want to govern Tshwane. Why do you think this is so important for the EFF?
Well, one quite immediate idea, Tumelo, is that Tshwane represents the political capital of the country. It would be quite a coup for the EFF if the party were to govern there. The EFF has said in negotiations, one of their ideas earlier last week was that they would have control of Tshwane, and then they would give control of Ekurhuleni and Johannesburg to the ANC and Action SA respectively. I think the idea of having, the EFF has said, Malema has said, they would like outright control in at least one metro.
Right.
And I think based on the numbers, Tshwane is the most attractive option for the party.
Yeah, and I suppose, obviously the EFF and Action SA, those are more of the bigger parties, or the majority parties in this context. But what is the role then of the smaller, much more independent parties? What significance do they have in these coalition talks?
I think every party is going to try and get as many positions and as much power for themselves as they can, Tumelo. And we know that in 2016, over the last 5 years, where small parties have been kingmakers in places like Nelson Mandela Bay, that the small parties are able to extract quite a number of concessions. In Nelson Mandela Bay, for example, in the second or third round of coalition talks, the Patriotic Alliance, which only had one seat, their PR councillor was elected as deputy mayor, because they were the coalition majority that pushed the coalition into majority. But ideally, the role of all parties in coalition, especially the small ones, would be to provide checks and balances so that the larger parties aren't able to just implement their own plans at the expense of people in the municipality, that the priority should always be on service delivery, especially to some of the more marginalized wards. And in the case of the Patriotic Alliance or Al Jamaa in Johannesburg, those parties actually have wards, so they have a constituency to promote. And the second point would be to, yes, continuing on what I just said, would be to promote the developmental needs and the priorities of their own constituents.
All right. Well, of course, as you bring that context to us, Paul, thank you so much for joining us, local government expert Paul Berkowitz, this morning.